Okay, problem number 5. This question is basically a maximum loan amount. That was what we were looking for here. And so anytime we're asking for maximum housing expense or maximum loan amount or minimum income, to me, I'm already making my qualifying T-bars. I'm already making my qualifying T-bars in the head. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Those finance questions. We're trying to figure out how much the buyer can afford in regards to a loan. That's the question. So once I knew it was a qualifying problem, boom, I didn't even think. I just basically said housing expense over gross monthly income times ratio. And then on this end, what I call the debt ratio, I put housing expense plus long-term debt, but the bottom is going to be the same as far as the setup goes, okay? So when I see it's a qualifying problem, I immediately do this. Now remember my rule in class, my rule is always, anytime it's a qualifying problem, let's just start plugging things in and hope something good happens. So here's the good thing that's going to happen on this. A lending institution will make a loan costing $841 per month per $1,000 borrowed. Now, it's not in my T-bar, so I can't do anything with it right now, but I promise you that information is going to be important later, okay? So I kind of set that aside for just a moment. If a borrower makes $45,000 per year, has debts of, is that 500? But look closely, of which 125 will be paid off in 4 months. What's our rule in this class for long-term debt?
6 months.
Yeah, if it's less than 6 months, you subtract it out. So he doesn't really have $500 of long-term debt, does he? He actually has 500 minus 125, which would be 375. Okay? So let me just plug those numbers in now that I'm starting to get a lot of information. Can we figure out from that one sentence what the buyer's monthly income is? 45,000 divided by 12 is what, 3750 or 35? 3750. 3750. Remember, plug stuff in, hope something good happens. So let's do it at both ends. 3750. That looked good so far. Okay. We now know what his long-term debt is, but remember, long-term debt only goes on the back end, what I call the debt ratio. Still feel pretty good about that? Okay, I'm going to continue that sentence where that was. His taxes and insurance are going to be $100 a month. Now, in fairness to you guys, you might not know why that's important yet, but when you're looking for the loan amount, it is, in fact, important. We'll get to that in just a moment. What would the maximum loan amount be? Would be if they use the qualifying ratios of 2836. Okay, do we have a spot we can plug in the ratios? Okay, let's plug those in. I know I use 2836 a lot, the test uses 2836 a lot, but don't let it confuse you. If we give you other ratios, just plug them in. Just plug them in. All right, somebody help me with 3750 times 28%.
1050.
1050?
Yes.
Okay, 1050. All right, so we found out what housing expense here. Now I will tell you that housing expense questions and loan amount questions are really the same question, just with an extra step. When I'm asking for the loan amount, I'm going to make you go one extra step. So really what we were looking for was the housing expense here. On the back end, 3750 times 36%, excuse me. What does that number come to?
1350.
1350. All right, toughie here, Lauren. Toughie, when you're looking for the maximum housing expense, which we kind of are to start with, remember on this back end, what it actually gives you is how much your housing expense and long-term debt could be. But the question wasn't how much your housing expense and long-term debt could be. It was how much your your housing expense is. So what am I going to do with the long-term debt on the back end only?
Subtract it.
Subtract it. Lauren, you with me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I messed up my ratio.
And listen, if you want to make yourself a note, I would love for you to understand this logically, but if you do not, just make a note to yourself. On maximum housing expense and maximum loan amount questions, you subtract the long-term debt from the back end only. That step right there is probably the one that messes up most students. obviously I am not through with this problem yet, but I'm pausing just to make sure everyone's caught up. Okay, let me ask you this question, very important. If you were doing a maximum housing expense question, technically we would be done, right? Because I have housing expense. And do you remember the answer? If it's a maximum housing expense question, is it the higher or the lower of the two numbers?
It's the low.
Maximum housing expense, weirdly enough, ends up being the lower of the two. So now, basically what I'm telling you is 975 would have been the answer if this was housing expense, okay? Okay. The difference is, in this problem, we're asking you to convert that housing expense to a loan amount. Now, I want you to look at that information that I have not used yet. The bank will qualify, the bank will loan you money based on, does it say $8.41 per 1,000? Okay. Do you know where that $8.41 per 1,000 came from? That's that amortization factor chart. In other words, we don't print the whole chart for you. We just go ahead and tell you what that number is. And then can somebody tell me why we give you the T&I number in this case? Why do we give you the T&I number here?
So that it is deducted.
Well, actually, we subtract it. We subtract it. Watch this. Jessica, see, housing expense equals PITI, right?
Right.
Does that sound familiar to you? So if I want this to be PI, and the reason I want it to be principal and interest only, you can't convert PITI to a loan amount.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right.
Taxes and insurance don't help you pay your loan.
Right.
So what I have to do is I subtract out anything that's not PI.
Okay.
So now do you see why we gave you that 100? Okay. So basically 975 minus 100 tells you the maximum P&I that you can qualify for. Notice that I'm not even bothering with this end of the transaction anymore, because once I realized that this was the lowest housing expense, I knew that it was going to be the lowest low amount as well. Okay, so I only have to solve one end. Now, Jessica, we can divide. These last two steps are a little bit weird. I'm going to write them on the board, and then I'll come back and talk to you about them. We're going to take the P&I, we're going to divide it by the factor, 8.41, that's going to give me kind of a weird looking number. Somebody give me that number, but give it to me up to 3 digits beyond the decimal point. Go ahead, Sir. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had it right there.
I did 104.042.
Okay. Point 042. The only reason I had you go 3 digits past the decimal point is because the next step is going to be to multiply by 1,000. I'm going to multiply 104.042 by 1,000. And of course, that's going to give me 104,000 and somewhere around 42, just depending on how you round it. We may be off by $1 or so right there. Let me talk to you about these last steps right here. I don't know if you remember, but when we had the amortization factor earlier in the class, I gave you a loan amount, and I told you if you had the loan amount and you were trying to find the monthly payment, you would divide by 1,000 and multiply by 8.41, multiply by the factor. Well, in this case, we give you the monthly payment, and we ask you to get the loan amount, so you just reverse the process. Divide by the factor, multiply by 1,000. Okay? Yes.
Why 100, why not 80 or 90?
Right here.
Yes.
Go look at your, you don't have the problem right there in front of you. Let me read this to you, Jeff. It says the T&I is $100 per month.
Okay.
Okay? If we want you to know that information, we have to give it to you, okay? Let's see. I think we can probably cut off the tape for right now, but let's take individual.